Students, today we are going to learn about second part of the general management of poisoning. In the general management of poisoning, we know that the first step is always supporting a patient and taking a supportive care. The second important step is preventing further absorption of the poison in his body. And the third step is to enhance the elimination of the poison from the body. And the fourth is administering a correct antidote. In supportive care, you have to understand what are the vital signs of the poisoning, what is the mental status of the patient, and what is the change in the pupil size, so that you come to know that which type of the drug might have caused the poisoning. Even we have to monitor the cardiac status by using or by recording ECG. We have to give assistance for protecting his airway. There has to be sometimes intravenous access, cervical immobilization if we suspect trauma, and we have to even rule out the hypoglycemia. Is it caused because of the poisoning or because of any pathological condition underlying it? So, second step, that is preventing the further absorption of the poison, which can be also termed as decontamination. There can be four ways: dermal decontamination, ocular inhalation, or if the poison is ingested orally, ingestion. So let's understand about the dermal exposure. If there is a dermal exposure to the poison, first of all we have to remove the clothes of poison patient, wash them thoroughly with sufficient amount of the lukewarm water for 15 to 30 minutes. All towels and clothing should be put into hazard waste bags. Some toxins may require further step of the decontamination, like 3 separate soap and water washings or showers are recommended if there is a decontamination with pesticides or insecticides like organophosphate compounds. Protective clothing should be immediately given to the patient to wear to reduce the risk of the toxicity while handling contaminated clothing or assisting with skin decontamination. So even the people who are handling these clothings or the accessories which might have got spoiled with the poison, those people are also required to be given a protective accessories. If there is a poisoning occurred through ophthalmic route, then immediate irrigation with a lukewarm water or normal saline is recommended. The patient should blink the eyes open and close during the irrigation. Continuous flooding of the eyes with large glasses of the water or low pressure shower should be done at least for 15 minutes. If necessary, the pH of the eyes may be tested, and if the pH is abnormal, then you have to irrigate the eyes until the pH normalizes. Even sometimes in serious cases, ophthalmological examination may be needed, especially when a patient complains about a serious irritation or visual disturbances. Then obviously there will be ophthalmic inspection which will be must. If the exposure has occurred through the inhalation route, then the exposure should be immediately removed. The patient should be shifted to the area which has a fresh air. Further evaluation must be carried out if the patient experiences any irritation in the respiratory tract or shortness in the breath, and immediately should be admitted in the hospital. If there is a gastrointestinal or the patient has ingested the poison, either depending upon which type of the poison which has been already identified, either you can suggest for vomiting, if not possible gastric lavage, or use of certain adsorbents or cathartics may be given, or the whole boil irrigation can be carried out. Now when we talk about the vomiting, usually the syrup of Ipecac which is given in 1 to 12 years, generally 15 ml for 1 to 12 years old and 30 ml for the adults. 90% vomit within 20 minutes after giving Ipecacuanha syrup, and 97% patient vomit with a second dose. Usually 3 to 5 episodes of the MSS occur and they resolve within the 2 hours. But it is associated with lot of contraindications. The ingestion with the potential for change in the mental status, or sometimes there may be it can be given only in those cases where there is a vomiting required for the caustic any substance is given, or toxin with more pulmonary rather than GIT toxicity ingestion is there, or the American Academy of the Pediatric has nowadays banned the use of the ipecacuanha even in the certain situations. It is no longer recommended as a emetic for GIT decontamination. Next is a gastric lavage. For this, the patient is poisoned. If the patient is poisoned in the left lateral, he has to turn into the left lateral position with the head lower than the feet. Then the fluid is used, which is usually a saline. It is introduced into the stomach through a large bore size orogastric tube, and then the drained it is drained out, the fluid is drained out in attempt to expel out the ingested part of the poison before it gets absorbed. If airway protection is necessary, then patient should be intubated before the lavage, gastric lavage begins. It is not given in the unconscious patients. It should be used only if the patient has ingested a life-threatening amount of substance and the procedure is undertaken within an hour after ingestion of the poison. Very commonly used are the adsorbents, where very commonly used adsorbent is activated charcoal, because it can be effective even in the non-specific type of the poisoning, where you exactly don't know which type of the poisoning has occurred, because it's a non-specific adsorbent, where the activated charcoal adsorbs or traps the drugs and the toxin on its surface area and prevents the further absorption of those toxins or the drugs. What is done is that activated charcoal slurry is made in the water, and it is given either orally or by the nasogastric or orogastric tube as soon as possible after the ingestion of the poison. Now, activated charcoal has to be used very cautiously in those patients which have a diminished bowel, and is contraindicated in the patients who have obstructions in their GIT, and should not be given if there is a esophageal or the gastric perforations are there, or sometimes emergent endoscopy possibly sometimes needed. Now, what are the different solutions which are used for the gastric lavage? Most of the poison, water or the saline is used. If their solutions are oxidizable, if the poison is oxidizable like alkaloids are there or salicylates are there, then we can go for potassium permanganate. If cyanide poisoning is there, usually sodium thiosulfate 25%. If oxalate poisoning is there, calcium gluconate. If iron is there, then the ferrioxamine can be given 2 gram in 1 liter of the water. Now let us understand the poisoning where activated charcoal can be given, and it is well suited in acetamine, amphetamine, aspirin, or the sedative hypnotics like barbiturate, benzodiazepine, or cardiovascular acting drugs like beta blocker, calcium channel blockers, or in the case of cocaine poisoning or morphine poisoning, opioid poisoning, phenytoin poisoning, theophylline or valproic acid. Whereas activated charcoal is not suitable when the poisoning has occurred because of the acids or the alkalis or alcohol or metals like iron or the lithium or cyanide, or due to the mineral acids, or if there is a poisoning due to organic solvents. The other way to remove the poison from the body or to prevent the further absorption of the poison is catharsis. Cathartics decrease the absorption of the drug or the toxins and spreading their passage through the GIT tract, and thereby limiting their contact with the wall of the GIT tract. Obviously, the strong cathartics are required to be used, like osmotic cathartics, which are usually given along with sometimes activated charcoal, where 70% sorbitol is used or 10% magnesium citrate is used, which decreases the transit time of the activated charcoal. The last technique which is used is whole boil irrigation. It involves giving very large volume of the balanced electrolyte solution very rapidly to flush out the contents of the GIT tract mechanically without creating any electrolyte disturbances. The commercial products are used for this purpose, and irrigation is carried out. It is usually contraindicated in those patients who have obstructions in the GIT tract or those who are suffering from the GIT perforations. Now, how will you enhance the elimination of the drug or the toxin? Again, multiple doses of the activated charcoal can be given. You can change the urine of the pH and enhance the excretion of the drug through the urine. chelation mechanism can be used, hemodialysis mechanism can be used, hemoperfusion can be used, or hyperbaric oxygenation therapy, which is also termed as HBO therapy, can be used. Let us understand in brief. What is multi-dose charcoal treatment? It is indicated when there is an ingestion of the larger doses or substances that slow release of the toxin is going to take place, or the toxins that slow down the GIT functions, or the toxics which undergo enteroenteric circulation. They are usually given, multi-doses of the charcoal are given usually orally or by the nasogastric tube or by the orogastric tube repeatedly at interval of 2 to 6 hours, and they are useful to enhance the elimination of certain drugs like theophylline, phenobarbital, or carbamazepine or valproic acid. There can be sometimes the complications with multiple doses of the activated charcoal, and there may be sometimes aspiration or there may be obstruction of the bowel. The next important technique is alteration in the pH of the urine. Usually there are two techniques which are used, alkalinization and acidification. Whereas alkalinization technique is more commonly used. It enhances the excretion of the drugs which are weakly acidic in the nature, because when you shift the pH of the urine to the alkaline side, the acidic drug will become ionized. Obviously, when it becomes ionized, its rate of reabsorption decreases and its rate of excretion from the body increases. Alkalinizing the patient's urine is achieved by giving the IV intravenous dose of the bicarb at 1 to 2 milliequivalent per kg dose, followed by intermittent bolus or continuous bicarb drip for altering or alkalinizing the urinary pH. It is obviously used to elimination of the acidic drugs which are usually excreted through the kidney, like salicylate if there is an overdose of the salicylate. The complications which can take place because of the alteration in the pH may include cerebral or the pulmonary edema and disturbances in the electrolyte, and therefore when you are giving sodium bicarbonate solution to the patient, the electrolyte level in the body needs to be monitored. Next, as I told you, second technique is acidification of the urine. It is no longer nowadays recommended because of the low drug clearance and the risk of the many complications such as rhabdomyolysis. Rhabdomyolysis is the breakdown of the muscle fibers which results in the release of the muscle fiber content into circulation, and some of these are toxic to the kidney, and usually if they are done frequently may lead to the damage of the kidney. Drugs which can be removed by this technique are usually amphetamine, which is weakly basic drug. Obviously, when you are shifting the pH of the urine to the acidic, it will get ionized and will be excreted at a faster rate. And others are phencyclidine. But this technique is not in much use. Then is the chelation. Chelation involves the use of the binding agents to remove the toxic substances. Usually metal toxicity when takes place, such as mercury, lead, iron, or the arsenic. Then we use chelating agents like dimercaprol, calcium disodium EDTA, so sodium EDTA, or deferoxamine. So these are the common chelating agent used for the heavy metal poisoning. Then there is a hemodialysis. Hemodialysis is the process of altering the solute composition of the blood by removing it from an artery, diffusing it across a semi-permeable membrane. So it's a transfer between the blood and the salt solution, and then returning again back the circulation, or it is blood via vein. It is used in moderate to severe intoxication to remove drug or the toxin when more conservative methods are failing, or a drug should be dialysable. Therefore, it should have a low molecular weight. Also, it should have a low protein binding, and it should have a good water solubility, which that makes the drug or the toxins suitable for the hemodialysis. Then only the hemodialysis will be applicable if these requirements are fulfilled. It can also be used temporarily as long term if the kidneys are damaged due to the overdose of any poisoning. Dialysis is reserved for specific toxins like salicylates, methanol poisoning, lithium poisoning, poisoning with theophylline, and so on. The benefits is that the removal of the toxin are already absorbed, means the one which has already crossed our GIT wall and has reached to the circulation can be removed by this technique. and both the parent compound as well as the, if after entering into circulation, if the drug or that poison has got converted into any metabolite, then that metabolite can, and that metabolite is also toxic, then with the hemodialysis it can be removed. Dialysis not recommended generally for small children, and it is usually carried out for the adults. Hemoperfusion. Hemoperfusion removes the drug and toxins from the patient's blood by pumping the blood through the cartridge of the adsorbent material, such as activated charcoal. The advantage of the hemoperfusion over hemodialysis is that the total surface of the dialyzing membrane is much greater with a hemoperfusion cartridge. The drugs that have high tissue binding characteristics and they have a large volume distributed outside the circulation, they are obviously not a good candidates for hemoperfusion, because then very little amount of the drug will be present in the blood. Although this is a very rarely used in poisoned and overdose population, hemoperfusion has been used successfully in patients who get intoxicated with the drugs like thiopide. Then comes the hyperbaric oxygenation therapy. In HBO therapy, oxygen is administered to the patient in an enclosed chamber at a pressure greater than the pressure at a sea level. This therapy is used especially in the carbon monoxide and methylene chloride poisoning, because methylene chloride is metabolized to carbon monoxide in the body. The complications of the HBO therapy are pressure related. There may be pressure related otalgia, that is pain in ear. There may be sometimes sinus pain, tooth pain, and tympanic membrane rupture may take place. So it has to be done by the expert professionals. Anxiety, convulsion, tensions in the pneumothorax cavity, they have also been observed in patients who are receiving this HBO therapy. Now we are coming to the last part, that is administration of the antidote. Antidote binds to the poison and forms an inert complex, and that gets excreted from the body. For example, here I have given dicobalt EDTA for cyanide poisoning, Persian blue for thallium poisoning. There can be accelerated detoxification like thiosulfate or thiocyanate, which accelerates detoxification of the cyanide. Then there is acetylcysteine, which shows the action of the glutathione. It combines with hepatotoxic paracetamol metabolite and results in its detoxification. Paracetamol leads to the depletion of glutathione. So this can be used acetylcysteine addition to that, which will combine with hepatotoxic metabolite of the paracetamol and will result in its detoxification. Next is a decreased toxic conversion, where ethanol it competes for alcohol dehydrogenase and prevents the methanol conversion to its toxic metabolite. So ethanol can be used for the treatment of the methanol poisoning. Receptor site competition, where the antidote will displace toxin from its receptor site and will antagonize the effect. They are usually the antagonists, like in the morphine poisoning, the naloxone, which binds to the mu receptor and it is a specific antagonist of it, will displace morphine from its binding site and will enhance its excretion. Receptor site blockade, like atropine, which will block the muscarinic receptor and can block the effects of the anticholinesterase. Like when there is organophosphorus compound poisoning, the patient needs to be pre-treated with the atropine. Atropinization of the patient is required to be done. Toxic effect bypass. For example, 100% oxygen use in the cyanide poisoning. So here I have given some of the examples of the antidotes and their indication, where acetylcysteine for paracetamol, flumazenil for benzodiazepine poisoning, dimercaprol for various metal poisoning, arsenic, copper, mercury, then dicobalt EDTA for cyanide, naloxone for opiates, penicillamine for again copper, mercury and lead, and sodium nitrite for cyanide and hydrogen sulfide poison. Then there are some more: tocopherol for carbon monoxide, pyridoxine for ethylene glycol, then pentetic acid for radioactive metabolite, Persian blue for thallium, protamine sulfate for heparin, which we already learned in theory, oxygen for cyanide, carbon monoxide, hydrogen sulfide, and ethanol, as I already explained, methanol poisoning or ethylene glycol poisoning. Then we can use certain antitoxins which neutralize a toxin, for instance botulism, which is a food poisoning from ingesting botulin. Potent bacterial toxin it is, and it is produced by Clostridium botulinum that causes the botulism and can be used as bioweapon. Then antivenins, which are antitoxins that neutralizes the venom, the offending snake or the spider. The antitoxin trivalent is available through the centers for disease and control and prevention to counteract the effect of botulism. There are several types of the antitoxin and they are very specific in their action and they act against a specific type of the venom only. Then what is important is that continuous monitoring of the patient. After giving so many treatment, taking all the care, giving the antidote, the next step of the managing of the patient includes monitoring of the patient. The seriously poisoned or the overdose patient may require continuous monitoring, maybe sometimes not only for hours but even for the days after the exposure. How will you monitor the patient? Obviously by carrying out certain physical examination, using various diagnostic tools, careful assessment of certain clinical signs or the symptoms, which will always provide you the information whether the patient's condition is deteriorating or he is recovering. And last, you have to give a psychiatric support or psychiatric care of the patient is required to be given. Psychosocial assessment and the support based on the assessment of the patient's sensorium and alertness. Those who have taken the overdose intentionally or there are suicidal tendencies which have been identified, there has to be careful examination of the patient's psychological status, whether he is depressed, is he uncooperative, non-responsive, is he agitated, anxious, does he become violent, is he showing any psychotic symptoms, allows the focus on psychological alternatives. And once you have a lot of counseling is required. There are many techniques to stabilize. Rehabilitation of the patient is required. If he's addicted, you have to provide the person to get rid of those some programs to get rid of those addiction, so that he afterwards again doesn't get exposed to those chemical overdoses and he doesn't get poisoned himself. So a lot of continuous follow-up is required, and even if the patient comes out of the psychiatric centers or control centers, then also a lot of follow-up is required and outpatient care is required. Thank you very much.